Scuderia Ferrari have dealt a devastating blow to Lewis Hamilton's career by internally leaking that the British driver's 8th World Championship is officially off the table for 2026. A catastrophic 50-point deficit to teenage prodigy Kimi Antonelli prior to the summer shutdown exposed a ruthless political reality inside Maranello. The Italian outfit have completely abandoned their marquee signing to focus all available resources on the Constructors Championship, a trophy that has eluded them since 2008. Leaked communications reveal that Maranello intentionally undermined Hamilton's comeback by informing Charles Leclerc of Lewis's 5-second time penalty several laps in advance. Instead of instructing Leclerc to hold up the chasing pack and shield his teammate, the pit wall served fourth position to the Monegasque on a silver platter. Leclerc secured his revenge after early season favoritism towards the 7-time champion, sending an unmistakable signal from team principal Fred Vasseur that zero leniency exists for costly execution errors on track. Engineering data confirms Ferrari have nearly exhausted their aerodynamic development budget, leaving them in a desperate gambling position. In a high-stakes bid to overhaul Mercedes' 72-point lead in the standings, engineers are readying an extreme power unit upgrade featuring advanced ADUO technology for Monza. This hyper-aggressive engine map demands extreme thermal management from the 350-kilowatt motor generator unit Kinetic, forcing engineers to compromise Hamilton's mechanical setup and compelling the driver to lift and coast along high-speed straights just to harvest electrical energy. The British veteran has effectively been reduced to a test mule to preserve the squad's financial bonuses. While Antonelli commands the driver's standings with impressive composure, the paddock remains on edge over the total breakdown in communication between Hamilton and Ferrari. Mercedes continue to wrestle with gearbox reliability concerns on George Russell's car, leaving a narrow window of opportunity for an Italian revival. Should Ferrari's upgraded electrical package function at Monza without scorching critical electronic components, the battle for the constructor's crown will take a seismic turn, proving that Maranello's political maneuvers are far from over. A highly confidential dossier has leaked from Milton Keynes, exposing a devastating consensus that senior management secretly hold 4-time world champion Max Verstappen entirely responsible for the catastrophic wave of chassis destruction defining their 2026 campaign. Whilst Red Bull Racing publicly absorbed the blame to prevent a civil war, senior engineers accused the Dutchman of actively compromising the operation. Telemetry experts suggest Verstappen is relentlessly attempting to wrestle the inherently unstable Red Bull 22 beyond the physical boundaries of the new aerodynamic regulations, creating a constant atmosphere of dread regarding what critical component will fracture next. The unprecedented sequence of heavy impacts during Qualifying 1 in Melbourne, the Qualifying 3 disaster in Spielberg, and the high-speed spin at Silverstone have blown a monumental financial crater through their strict cost cap allowance. Officially, the outfit cite recurring gearbox anomalies and structural flaws in their highly controversial rear wing assembly. However, unreleased data traces show Verstappen outright refuses to moderate his aggressively demanding driving style to suit the drastically altered 2026 rules. The eradication of pure ground effect has stripped the chassis of essential downforce. Yet, Verstappen stubbornly forces corner entries with the identical aerodynamic load expectations of the previous generation, triggering violent, uncontrollable slides that pulverize immensely expensive suspension components and leaving the garage constantly bracing for the inevitable. This internal crisis was starkly illuminated when paddock analysts highlighted that newly promoted teammate Isaac Hadjar suffers far fewer sudden spins in the exact same machinery. Telemetry demonstrates the young Frenchman employs a highly pragmatic approach, purposefully respecting the sudden degradation of airflow and the severe battery management constraints dictated by the heavy new power units. Conversely, Verstappen's sheer obsession with extracting impossible lap times forces the rear axle to lose its downforce vector abruptly, overwhelming the mechanical grip. Rather than confessing their latest creation is merely the 4th fastest challenger on the grid, Red Bull intentionally shoulder the public embarrassment, orchestrating an elaborate cover-up designed solely to obscure an explosive contractual vulnerability. This desperate charade is entirely linked to a performance exit clause, which strictly mandates Verstappen must remain within the top 2 of the Drivers' Championship by the end of October. Carrying over 60% of their total championship points on his shoulders, the champion is actively weaponizing this potential departure to hold the entire board hostage. Management are currently scrambling in a state of absolute panic to draft a revised agreement securing his services until 2029, utterly terrified that one wrong move during these fragile negotiations will trigger the complete collapse of their motorsport empire. The political warfare within Milton Keynes has utterly erupted during the summer break. Max Verstappen has executed an impeccably calculated trap against Red Bull Racing by adamantly refusing to sign a contract extension through to 2029. The four-time world champion has effectively frozen all high-level corporate negotiations, deliberately preserving his exit clause for 2027. This relentless stall tactics have sent the Austrian team into an unprecedented state of blind panic behind closed doors, triggering intense desperation among executives who suddenly realize the entire foundation of their project is crumbling beneath them. The Verstappen camp responded with ruthless force following explosive media reports claiming Red Bull had tabled a record-breaking financial offer on the strict condition that his performance release clause be completely eradicated. Jos Verstappen publicly torched these strategic leaks, declaring that external commentators understand absolutely nothing about the reality of the situation. Verstappen Sr. exposed senior management's desperate attempt to project a false facade of stability to reassure vital commercial partners ahead of their ambitious 2026 engine program, asserting that Max will never surrender his contractual freedom whilst the Red Bull 22 remains such an unpredictable monster. Telemetry and race trace analyses from the Hungarian Grand Prix brutally validate the rationale behind this high-stakes impasse. The operational data reveals that Red Bull are suffering from a severe loss of efficiency within their motor generator unit kinetic systems alongside fundamental instabilities in rear airflow management. Fully aware that his current machinery represents merely the fourth fastest package on the grid, Verstappen is demanding absolute guarantees of performance rather than empty promises. Whilst team leadership foolishly attempt to downplay the threat, the Dutchman is weaponizing his contractual uncertainty as a brutal lever against the engineering division led by technical director Pierre Wachet, demanding radical aerodynamic revisions before the critical October deadline passes. By withholding his signature, Verstappen has effectively brought the former dominant force of the paddock to their knees. With the technical infrastructure steadily fracturing following continuous staff departures across key departments, the threat of activating his position-based exit clause in October looms like a dark cloud over the factory. Should the technical department fail to deliver an immediate, transformative breakthrough on track, the champion stands fully prepared to walk away from his long-term home, leaving the iconic brand facing absolute ruin. The hypothetical seat swap between Mercedes and Red Bull Racing has descended into an absolute nightmare for George Russell. Behind closed doors in Milton Keynes, senior figures within the Austrian outfit have outright rejected the British driver's candidacy to replace four-time world champion Max Verstappen for the 2027 campaign. Russell operates under the delusion that his status as a team leader at Mercedes would automatically open doors across the grid. Yet Red Bull executives have concluded that his underlying technical framework and driving methodology are fundamentally incompatible with a chassis designed to push the absolute boundary of aerodynamic performance. Engineering data from recent Grand Prix sessions brutally exposes Russell's defining vulnerability, which is his over-reliance on mechanical predictability. Unlike Verstappen, who aggressively attacks corner entry with intentional oversteer to compensate for the significant loss of floor downforce under the 2026 technical regulations, Russell requires an exceptionally stable rear axle to perform. The moment thermal stress impacts the battery harvesting capabilities of the 350 kilowatt motor generator unit kinetic, causing unpredictable shifting in brake balance along high-speed deceleration zones, Russell's outright pace collapses as he falls back on overly defensive setups. Red Bull engineers firmly believe that appointing Russell would stall their entire development trajectory, as he lacks the extraordinary adaptability required to drive through chronic grip deficiencies without demanding an immediate, ruinously expensive redesign of the front suspension geometry. Having been completely dismissed by Red Bull while simultaneously being systematically eclipsed by teenage sensation Kimi Antonelli inside his own garage, Russell watches his future career prospects contract at an alarming rate. The Mercedes driver now finds himself dangerously exposed, fully aware that Toto Wolff's primary allegiance has shifted toward the young Italian prodigy, leaving Russell completely isolated in political maneuvering. With the Austrian squad actively scouting alternative talent options that better suit their high downforce driving philosophy, Russell faces the grim reality of being left completely stranded in a volatile driver market, serving as a stark warning of how rapidly status can evaporate at the highest level of modern motorsport.